will record and share. See if that's working. Okay, let me do this one more time. Okay, so we're recording. So let me go ahead then and share the screen, and we'll look at the assignments first. And as we see this, notice I'm going to finish this lecture now, then I'll post the study guide for Monday for these 3 lectures on Greece. So I think that'll be the best. And we've given you a lot of work, but what's been great is that we took kind of a pause this week to allow some students to catch up, which has really been helpful. There's about 5 students who really took advantage of that. They went from 0 to heroes, in just a week's worth of very hard work and got caught up. So we're really proud of them. Way to go. And the rest of you, maybe you caught a little bit of a break from my class. We're able to focus on some of your other classes and get all caught up there. But Monday, we'll wrap up the Greeks with a study guide, and we'll be starting the Romans on Monday. So that's how that will work. All right, well, today is kind of a big day. There's just so much going on, and there's just some things we want to cover. And one of them is we want to go a little bit more into this idea of the skeptics. And so let's go ahead and review this just briefly. Essentially, the skeptics are challenging knowledge. What can you really know? How can you know it for sure? How can you prove it? And they're asking people to obtain knowledge through systematic doubt, questioning, that's what it means, and continually testing those theories, those ideas. And basically, look at the bottom here. These are the guys that lead us toward empiricism in terms of finding empirical evidence that you can prove, right? Beyond skepticism, that the facts are the facts. So it requires systematic investigation and proving, oftentimes using mathematics to drive the data to learn something for sure. And we did all those old wives' tales and things like that, and a lot of things that people think are true aren't, and how do you get to the truth? Well, this leads to the scientific method, and the scientific method is a real gift to the modern world. So in this class, because we don't have a lot of time, we only have 2 days instead of 5 days a week, we have to drop a lot of things. One of the things a lot of the modern history we won't have time for. So what I'm trying to do is to pull the ancient and classical world, as we've done all the way through the class, into today. So you see the relevance of what these Greeks came up with in our lives today. And I think this lecture today is a good example of that. So let's go ahead and take you now to Hippocrates. Now, Hippocrates would be the father of medicine, right? And he would be the guy that would be the first person that actually started dissecting cadavers, trying to figure out how the systems of the body actually worked. And he did a lot of primary research. His drawings were used for centuries as the textbook models of the human body. Now, they got a lot of things right, but he also got a lot of things wrong. We talked about the vapors, I think, before, where there's 4 vapors in the body, and if you balance those vapors, then you can be healed, right? Well, that's nonsense. That's not, it's not from your nose, from your mouth, from your vital parts. You have all of these vapors, and blood is one of them. And one of the things that led to was a thing called bloodletting. So if you got sick, they would actually bleed your blood. He used to put leeches on people for the same reason, suck the bad blood out. Well, that's terrible. That's not good science. George Washington was a victim of this when he was sick with a terrible infection. Antibiotics would have cured him just like that. But they didn't have those antibiotics back then, and this was back in 1799. And the doctors then bled him, took some of his blood out, a weakened hospital victim, he was in his bed in Mount Vernon, and made him even weaker. So they did get a lot of things right, but they got a lot of things wrong. But it was a start. It was a start toward the medical science. But modern medical science, as we know it today, is really only about 150 years old. it's really the blink of an eye in all of human history. They tried, they did their things. They had some things that succeeded. The Arabs would be inspired by Hippocrates and whatever. They'd actually do some brain surgery where, for example, somebody gets a concussion and there's blood on the brain. Well, you know how deadly that can be. And they would actually drill in and get the blood out. So they could do some remarkable things, but there's lots of things, of course, that they missed. But luckily, they got the ball rolling, and we really need that today. Now, I am going to go into a little bit of the political science really fast for you because we have some important things. And again, this is not a political class in any way, but what it is it's got to be informative because we have some big events happening and we need to kind of be aware of it. I'm going to just right now enlarge the screen here because tonight is the vice presidential debate. And basically what we've got in this country is, are we going to believe the scientists, going to believe the evidence about this virus or not? And that's going to come out in the debate. The last debate was ridiculous. The constant interruptions, never allowed Joe Biden to explain what he would do. He never had a chance to really talk, with the president talking over him the whole time. How many saw that debate? Raise your hands. Yeah, it was not good, not pretty. Tonight's will be different. But I want to explain something to you. Now look me up here on the screen. Everybody look at the screen here. Because a lot of people are billing this debate tonight as the true presidential debate. Because the candidates in the last debate didn't get a chance to explain what they want to do, tonight should be a very different experience. So it'll be the vice presidents explaining what the two leaders would do if they became president. And also too, understand this, now look me straight here from the screen. I'm going to be honest with you here. Neither one of our presidential candidates is a young person. They're both in their 70s. Both of them have had better days, both physically and intellectually. That's obvious to everyone. So the odds that one of these two people could become the president of the United States makes this, in my mind, the most important vice presidential debate in American history. Usually vice presidential debates are interesting, but not important. But people are going to tune in. Who do you trust to take over should something happen to whoever wins the election? Now we hope the next president wins the election and goes on to 4 years, whatever, whoever it is, Biden or Trump. We don't care which one wins in this class. We just want them to be healthy and do a good job. But we have to be realistic too. And so tonight's debate, I think, would be worth watching with your family and to discuss it, right? Okay, so I just want to bring that out. We're 27 days away from the election and the polls are shifting. You know, one of the things we do is we do empirical research where we poll people and try to get their opinions as to who they're going to vote for, why they're going to vote, all these kinds of things. And so this is statistical analysis too. And this site, which we use a lot in political science, does the betting odds. If you were actually to bet as to who was going to win, the odds are 83% to 17 that it's going to go to Biden after the debate. This shifted dramatically after that debate. It just went, wow, different. And so to show you now, this is using data to give us answers about what's going on with this election. I'm going to go ahead and show you this poll that happened yesterday and let you guys kind of work through the numbers and work through the issues that came out. Here we go.
Until election day, and Joe Biden's opening up a big lead. CNN's new poll shows him leading by 16 points, 57% to 41% for President Trump. Let's get more now on the state of the race as we count down to the election from CNN.
Sorry.
It's Chief National Correspondent John King. He's at the Magic Wall. John?
Don, 4 weeks from tonight, we will be counting the votes. A lot can change in 4 weeks, but right now, Joe Biden has a lead that is growing and that, frankly, is quite overwhelming. Let's take a look at our new poll, and the headline number is this. This is a wow, the largest lead of the race for Joe Biden. 57% for the Democrat, the former vice president, 41% for President Trump. A 16-point spread. Big anyway, all the more important because Joe Biden is so well above 50%. That's your goal in politics, get above 50. Donald Trump getting just 4 in 10 votes right now nationally across the United States. Why? Well, voters have taken a giant turn to Joe Biden on the big issues. Look at the gaps here. Look at the gaps, not just the lead, but the gap. Who can best handle racial inequality? Wow. Who can best handle the #1 issue in the country right now? Joe Biden, more than 20 points. Who's better to handle your health care? 20 points. Crime and safety. The president's tried to make law and order a big issue. A big advantage, 12 points for Joe Biden. Even the economy, the two candidates essentially split there, a slight edge for Biden. That's essentially a statistical tie. When it comes to the issues that matter to voters, a big edge for Joe Biden. That translates into a big edge when you ask them, who are you going to vote for? But it's not just the issues, it's who you want as a leader, the personal characteristics, Don. Look at these numbers. Who would best unite the country? Lopsided for Joe Biden. Who is honest and trustworthy? A 25-point advantage. People don't trust the incumbent president of the United States in the middle of a pandemic. A 25-point advantage on honest and trustworthy. Same, a 20-point advantage. Which candidate more cares about you? The issues that matter to you. Big edge for Biden. You might call that the empathy factor. Plans to address the country's problems. Again, 15-point lead, 16 points for Joe Biden there, and even on keeping the United States safe, whether we're talking about law and order domestically, commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, a 12-point edge over the president. So Trump supporters are saying this is a national poll. Remember 2016, we picked president state by state. Well, they would be right. #1, that's a big national lead. #2, the battleground state polling also overwhelmingly coming in to show a Biden advantage. Brand new Pennsylvania poll today. 12 points in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Donald Trump flipped that state 4 years ago. Critical to his 2020 chances. Joe Biden enters the last 4 weeks with a big lead in Pennsylvania, where he campaigned today. Arizona, that was red in 2016. Not since Bill Clinton has a Democrat won Arizona. Comfortable. Biden lead in Arizona. Florida, the battleground of all battlegrounds. Always very close. That's a close race, but advantage Biden in a state the president has to win. Donald Trump, the president has to win Florida. Donald Trump does. Joe Biden doesn't need it. But look, a lead there. And Ohio, no Republican has won the White House without Ohio in modern times. It's a tie right now. A tie in the state of Ohio. A state, again, Joe Biden doesn't need it. The president does, and he is competitive. So, Don, I'll close just by going back to this. Yes, it's a national poll, but it's the biggest lead of the race heading into the final 4 weeks. A lot can happen. You have.
Okay, so we're just showing you that to kind of show you the state of the race, and also to hopefully encourage, maybe if you can, watch the debate tonight, because it is important for the country, but also for world history. But also look at the math and science and the data and the computers that are being used to collect all this data and to report it. I mean, this is all, we call our class political science for a reason, because we deal a lot with data and analysis of data. So that becomes kind of important to us. All right, well, let's get back to, a couple more things. Since the debate, the president has come down with the virus himself, and he was hospitalized for 3 days, as you guys know, Walter Reed Medical Center. But then also, because in the White House, they didn't social distance and they didn't require masks, it has spread to over 21 people. And basically the West Wing of the White House, where everybody works, is a ghost town, as people are either quarantined, ill with the virus, or working from home. The president is there, but they've got a very reduced staff. And we've got a situation where our executive branch of our government is basically paralyzed. And so this is alarming. Also, what's alarming is that we've got 11 of our top leaders of our military also quarantined, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This guy came down with it. He's the representative to the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the president. He got it and exposed potentially all these others. So for the safety of our military leaders, they're quarantining. Now, listen, it's kind of important then that we learn the science, that we not get in this battle of whether we should or shouldn't wear masks. We know masks work. The CDC person, leader, said it's 95%. If 95% of Americans wore masks, we would drive this down to 1% so fast to make your head spin. And it will be ultimately more effective than the vaccines, because we don't know how effective the vaccines are. We have to do a lot of testing, scientific, empirical research to make sure a vaccine is not only effective, but safe, right? So as we look at all of this, this is a gift from the Greeks. This idea of proving things, empirical research, data-driven, doing multiple experience, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials on a vaccine. All of this is a gift from the classical world. And so let's give you another good example of this. And I want to play this to you. It's about 15 minutes long, but it's really worth it. The state that suffered the most at the beginning was New York City, or New York, and then New York City specifically. Why? Because these major airports, people coming in from Europe, they all go there. And they had people getting off the plane from Italy and other places that were shedding the virus. In particular, one person who was an Hasidic Jew, that is the most orthodox of the Jewish community, right? And you can, you'll see them, Hasidic Jews, they wear certain clothing, they have the ringlets. They're ancient in terms of their practice of their religion, 2,500 years ago. So they come from the ancient world, right? And are still a thriving community of religious believers. But he comes back, probably didn't even know he was sick, goes to his temple, hundreds of people there in New Rochelle, New York, and it turns into the big hot spot, the first hot spot in the country, where the rates of infection just went through the roof. He also went to a wedding, big wedding. He'll describe it in here. Because, you know, that's what you do, right? And then he, of course, maybe didn't even know he was symptomatic. We didn't even know that it was airborne at that point. And so that's what happened. So they had to fight a terrible battle. The battle fought in New York through April and May was terrible. But they used science and math and data, empirical data, to get to an infection rate right now that's 1.22%. We're at like 10, 11%. So we want to follow this model. And here he is, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. And when it was the worst, he was on TV every day explaining to everybody exactly what was happening, where progress is being made, looking at the data, and required masks, closed down restaurants and bars, closed schools, and brought it under control. Now they've got some new hotspots. So he's back on the air as of Monday, trying to get these little hotspots from blowing up again. So they've got 20 zip codes with hotspots where the infection rates jump to 5.5%. And he's just not going to let that happen. And so let's go through and look how somebody looking at science, meeting with the doctors, the scientists, the data people to make decisions based on data. True gift of the Greeks. Here we go.
Spot zip codes are where many states are right now. And you'll see it in some of the numbers. Statewide positivity rate is 1.01 outside of the hotspot zip codes. 1% is an unbelievably low infection rate. And it's, as we're going into the fall, I believe it's going to be practically unsustainable. But it's remarkable that we're that low right now. If you roll in the hotspot zip codes, which now distorts the balance of the sample, it's 1.2. Number of deaths, 8. They are in our thoughts and prayers. Statewide hospitalization, 636. ICU, 149. Statewide intubation, 70. Context first. We're coming into the fall. We have been told since early March, beware the fall. Beware the fall. Weather gets colder, more people move indoors, flu season, schools open. Schools opening are almost a predictor of increased infection rate. Colleges opening turned out to be more problematic than we thought. Colleges opening. SUNY's doing a great job. That's why Dr. Jim Malatras is here today. If SUNY was not doing a great job, Dr. Jim Malatras would not be here today. That's how you know that. So the fall is a challenging period, as we know. And we expect to see the infection rate go up in the fall. Context. all over the globe, the infection rate is going up. All over the globe. Countries that were doing remarkably well are now seeing spikes. USA overall is going up. Israel has a real problem. EU has a real problem. Canada has a problem. Argentina has a problem. The UK has a problem. And the UK, remember, they were up, they were down, they're up again. You look across the nation, states are all going up. So context, beware the fall, has been right.
And of course, Utah, you see, made the New York state broadcast, right? This is just for the state of New York. And there we are. And we want to be where they are, right? But look at all these other states. Wisconsin's really going through it right now. They're really having a bad time.
New York is the outlier in all of these international and national trajectories. We are the exception to the rule. This is the one situation where we want to be the exception to the rule, right? Other states up, other countries up. That in and of itself is a complicating factor because New York State is not hermetically sealed. We put a quarantine in effect. I know, but people still drive in. It's still water through a screen. People are still coming in on flights, international flights. People in Texas are coming in. People in California are coming in. People in New Jersey are coming in. So that's an added problem for us. If you look at the hotspot infection rate yesterday, Western New York is a hotspot. Yesterday was a good day, 1.2%. Broome has a hotspot. Came out of a pub restaurant, but Broome has a hotspot. Orange County, Rockland County, Brooklyn, Nassau could be on there with a hotspot in one section of Nassau. These clusters have to be attacked. Picture that map as a map of dry grass, and picture those hot spots as embers within the field of dry grass. Okay, that's how I think of it. The only course is to run to those embers and stamp them out immediately and dramatically. That's why I don't sleep at night. So you have to attack the clusters. How do you attack the clusters?
You guys remember the fires this summer up near Pleasant Grove and Springville and others, and how fast that grass went up those hillsides and started taking a lot of our forest away. What weapons do they have? Well, they have a mask, getting tested and saving lives, right? And for example, that one bar, they had it down to a specific bar. That's how good they are in New York, where it spread from that one bar, where people were maybe hanging outside the bar, or they had too many people in the bar. And they need to, stop that behavior until they get down below 1% again. But testing is critical, and that's testing every hotspot every day until they know they have it under control.
Testing, 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 testing. Get the facts. Follow the data. Contact tracing, off the testing. Testing in itself doesn't tell you anything, just that you have a problem. Contact tracing helps you solve the problem. And enforcement. Enforcement. Oh, that's so harsh, enforcement.
Okay, now listen to this. So, well, we have to wear masks and we have to do these other things, right? We can't just, we have a thing, it's the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And a lot of people are more worried about pursuit of happiness and liberty than life. Life comes first, right? In our great Declaration of Independence. But he's saying something important. You know, is he being draconian or is he being more like sullen, more like by sister test? Let's go ahead and play this a little bit back. Here we go. Ready?
Problem. And enforcement. Enforcement. Oh, that's so harsh, enforcement. Yeah, it's not. Enforcement is kind.
Enforcement is kind. Well, listen to his argument here.
You know why? Because enforcement saves lives. That's what enforcement does. Lack of enforcement is not kind. I believe that. I believe that. And I have said that from day one. And the state has been bullish on this. And it has worked. It's worked. It's not like I'm putting forth a proposition. Enforcement works. Any rule is only as good as the enforcement. Don't speed. Are you enforcing it? Don't litter. Are you enforcing it? Any rule is only as good as the enforcement.
Now notice the rhetorical skill here. He's using rhetorical skills to build an argument. Yes, we should wear masks, just like we should wear seatbelts and not text and drive. And if you don't enforce the speed rules or the wearing of your seatbelts, people won't do it. They'll speed and they won't wear belts. Same thing with texting. Listen to his answer here. So this is rhetoric. This is the study of trying to explain the problem to people so that they understand and can agree with your position.
Especially when it's a rule that people don't want to follow. Seatbelts, only as good as you enforce it. Don't text and drive, only as good as you enforce it. I say to people when I see them texting and driving, I say to them, I pull up, I roll down my window, I say, hi, you are texting and driving. That is a violation of the law. I know, because I passed that law. It's only as good as the enforcement. We're New York tough. What's within tough? Smart. Follow the data, follow the analytics, disciplined, do the enforcement. Stick to the rules, stick to what's working. I've said this 100 times, but at this point in my life, I've said everything 100 times. Too many local governments are not doing enforcement. Warnings are not enforcement. Put a mask on or I will ticket you is not enforcement. Store owner, you're not supposed to have this many people in your store. We are past that. Everybody knows the rules. You don't have to pull over a car today and say, you know, you're not supposed to text and drive. They know that. They know that. What you wind up saying is, I got away with it. We've been saying you get away with it for too long. And we have lived through this repeatedly. This was bars and restaurants. How many times did I come before you and say bars and restaurants are a problem? We have gatherings in front of bars and restaurants. Local governments have to do the enforcement. Week after week after week. And it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. I then said, forget it. I give up. The state government will do bars and restaurants. And we put together a task force. We did over 1,000 violations. And you know what? Compliance with bars and restaurants is markedly better than it has been. When was the last time any of you wrote a story about bars and restaurants and gatherings in front of bars and restaurants? Why? Because the owners know they'll lose their license. Oh, that's tough. No, we saved lives. I believe that. We saved lives. New York City has clusters. Queens, Brooklyn. We also have clusters akin to this, Orange, Rockland, a little bit in Nassau. I just got off the telephone with Mayor de Blasio, Controller Stringer, Council Speaker Johnson, UFT President Mike Mulgrew. We had a very good conversation. It was a collaborative, positive conversation. It's a complex situation, works on a number of levels. There are a number of issues, and we talked through them. We have clusters where the viral infection rate is higher, about 3%, 4%. Where does the virus mainly transmit? Dr. Zucker was on the phone. We asked him that question. Schools, which are also the place where different communities come together, right? So my child goes to a private school, your child goes to a public school, but our children are on the same hockey team, or on the same soccer team, or they play together in the playground. Schools can be locations of transmissions. Religious gatherings, especially in these communities. New Rochelle, first hotspot, was an Orthodox Jewish man who went to a temple, hundreds of people, and then a wedding, hundreds of people. Orthodox Jewish gatherings often are very, very large. And we've seen what one person can do in a group. Look at this rose garden with the president, by the way. Outdoor event. Oh, those are safe, outdoor events. No, no, no. Safer than indoor. Nobody ever said safe. Safer than indoor. And look at that growing list of people at a presidential rose garden event who were theoretically tested before they came in. How many people?
That's the one I explained to you at the beginning of class. This event that happened about 10 days ago, the president's ill, the whole White House staff is now shut down for the most part. 21 infections just in the Oval Office area just this morning, as of this morning. So, yeah.
People could have been infected. 1, 2, and look at the spread in the Rose Garden. You know what happens here. You've seen it over and over again. Third are public spaces. These are basically in priority order. Fourth are businesses where consumers may interact, but that is way down on the list relatively. And the key to all of these areas is enforcement. All of them. We have rules for all these areas. We have rules for all these areas in place now. Well, then how's it increasing? Because people are not following the rules. That's why. On schools, my number one concern has always been schools. I said to the parents of this state, I will not allow your child to be sent to any school that I would not send my child, period. And you have my personal word on that. I've spoken to thousands of parents who have called up and said, I'm worried about sending my child to school. I said, I won't allow a school to open that I wouldn't send my child to. That's my test. On the schools in these areas, not all of them have been tested. So we don't have data on all of the schools in these hotspot clusters. That troubles me. On the telephone call, we were all basically in agreement. They have sampled some schools in the clusters, but not all the schools. And these are the hotspot clusters, right? So if you have to prioritize testing, you want to go to these schools first because you know they are in hotspot clusters. So some schools in those clusters we have not yet done testing on. Better safe than sorry. I would not send my child to a school in a hotspot cluster that has not been tested. where I did not have proof that the infection rate was low in that school. I would not send my child. I am not going to recommend or allow any New York City family to send their child to a school that I wouldn't send my child. We're going to close the schools in those areas tomorrow.
Okay. So based on the empirical data in those hotspot clusters, because they haven't got the data, better to be safe than sorry, and they're just closing the schools. This is how you make decisions based on data, based on facts, based on science, based on testing, empiricism. And this, of course, is a good example of the application of what the Greeks have tried to teach us in our own lives. So I thought that was worth viewing because I think it shows us, and now New York, of course, is our international city, right? I mean, they're the closest to Europe. That's where all of the really big trade happens between Europe and the United States and all over. So it's a world capital. It's the center of finance. It's really an important spot. And we can't just, stop interacting with the world in New York City, but at the same token, we can win against this virus if we'll trust the scientists and do what they say. And so we have to become scientific minded and not living in a dream world that some magical cure is going to happen. We have to make sure that those vaccines are tested properly, so we have confidence in them. And that's going to take time. So sometimes science takes a little time, but do no harm. Make sure that the vaccine is good and then see the effects of that. We also owe a lot of poetry to the Greeks, modern styles of poetry. I'm going to skip that a little bit. Another thing, though, we owe them is theater. Now, I don't know about you, but during this whole COVID lockdown thing, I would be lost without Netflix, without a few great shows to watch, binge watching. I don't know. We've done a certain series like 3 times now, because they're so much fun. Avengers, for example. Downton Abbey, you don't care about that, but we've watched that a couple of times. We're now into the Sherlock Holmes things. Nola Holmes is just wonderful if you get a chance to see it. Point is this is our amusement, and we got created in Greece. When you watch Netflix tonight or Hulu or whatever you take in your media, they created the forms of entertainment in theater. And so they would have a festival called the Festival of Dionysus. And they would have, it was a festival of song and dance, but they would have these dramatic competitions 3 times each year. And all the great playwrights would write their plays, and it'd be like going to the Sundance Film Festival, right? They'd show these, and then there'd be reviews and prizes for the best play of the season, like winning the Academy Award, and there was usually a cash prize. But this is the birth of the Western tradition of comedy and drama and theater and movies. And they had themes. They had kind of 2 basic ones, drama and comedy. And they would wear masks and so on and act out these different parts. And they would use familiar characters. For example, Socrates was a character often in some of these plays because everybody knew who he was, thought he was a little eccentric. And we'll talk about him in a second. Sometimes they just based it on well-known legends and myths. But they always brought out these human emotions: love, hate, greed, fear, just like we do today. They also talk about the struggle of man against fate. There's things that are going to happen. So how does man handle that? And then one real key aspect of drama for them was to find a protagonist, a star, an actor, whatever, a protagonist, the person you're following in the story. And they have a flaw. And while they might be successful for a time, that flaw catches up to them and leads to their demise. And that was a popular kind of notion in the Greek dramas. So we have these great playwrights: Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Aristophanes, and each in their turn would win the big prize. Now, kind of a weird story, but remember when they were on the Sicilian expedition and all the Athenians got killed there in Sicily fighting? One group that wasn't put to death, put to the sword, was any of the Greek soldiers or people there who knew theater and had memorized the most recent plays from Aeschylus or Sophocles or Euripides and could recite them by heart. They were spared. Why? Because the people in Magna Graecia, they wanted a new theater production. So they let these guys live as actors. Really? That's how much they loved their theater. That's an interesting story, right? But this was a big deal. And they had these big amphitheaters. For example, Sophocles, he was the greatest of all the drama folks, and he wrote Oedipus and Antigone. This one, Antigone expressed the role of women in Greek society and the injustice and tyranny often women face. That's a common theme today. Oedipus, fate, arrogance, injustice catches up with this guy. Colleges will actually still play these. Like, for example, SUU had a bunch of Greek plays that they actually ran at Southern Utah University because they have a great drama school. Now, we talk about today, how many leaders in the world rise to prominence, but there's a flaw that leads to their downfall. Now, I don't know who's going to win this election, but if Mr. Trump loses, how many movies, how many books are going to be written about his character flaws that led to him losing the election? A lot. There's a lot being written right now. So what we've got is that politicians, all these are really open season, right, for these playwrights. And that was the way it was back then too. Pericles was often portrayed as a character. Now, sometimes they would be somebody like Pericles, not Pericles directly, but everybody knew it was Pericles. You look down here at the bottom, Socrates was often parodied. They showed him as this bumbling, stumbling dreamer who was constantly saying all these crazy things, right? And so he was mocked. Now, no doubt he was in on the joke and enjoyed it. Pericles, too, from what we understand, that it was all part of what we call satire. It's the idea of Greek comedy is like today, comedians make people laugh. And some, though, satire, while it makes you laugh, also has an important political statement to it. In other words, there's more to it than that. Thinly veiled mockery of political leaders, basically. And they were doing this like we do today. Think of this, Saturday Night Live portrayal of some politician or whatever, same sort of thing. We see this happen just recently, just in this last week. We have some campaign ads that were produced by the Lincoln Project. Let's see if I can find the right one. Let's see, is this it? Okay, let me take this one back and we'll do it right here. Okay, it's called Covita. Now, what this is satire. It's a campaign ad by a group of Republicans, and remember, the president is a Republican, who have left him and want Biden to win. So they produced this piece of satire, and it's now a big campaign ad being played in swing states across the country. It's based upon a musical called Evita. Now, Evita, 20 years ago, people my age are the ones that are going to respond to this ad, because Evita was a big, big play on Broadway, and it was a big musical on TV too. Kind of like Hamilton, not quite as big as Hamilton, but certainly everybody knew it, and they knew the lead songs. And it's a story of Juan Perón and his wife Evita, who suddenly find themselves swept up in their politics and rise to become the leaders of Argentina, the presidente de Argentina, and the first lady of Argentina. And how their excesses caught up to them, right? And that was their downfall. And so the play is, about her, and she sings a song. It's the lead song of the play. Don't cry for me, Argentina. I know all these things happen, but I had this experience, right? And so it was a powerful song. Well, they've taken that and made it satire in a political ad today, just like they would in ancient Greece. Let's go ahead and play it. Here we go. Hang on, let's see. Don't want that. There we are. It is he's not wearing his mask going into the residence with all the people that work in there. And that's become kind of a big political issue here in the United States. But what my point is that this is satire, and it's taking a real thing that's serious, but also having some fun with it. So everybody kind of laughs, but they also think and learn. And so this could very much be Pericles and talking about Pericles or Socrates or whoever, right? So it's an interesting thing, this form called satire, called comedy, and invented by the Greeks all those years ago. And we're still doing it. We're still doing it. Just watch Saturday Night Live and they do their political skits. It's like, wow, okay. Another thing they did that they really excelled at, they just took it to a new level, and that was sculpture. Everybody else, when they did sculpture, they had these static images. You've seen the Greek stuff. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the Egyptian stuff. But these guys really changed sculpture itself. So much so that they would inspire the Renaissance sculptors 1,000 years later. They would carve in wood, gold, ivory, precious metals, bronze, but the ones we really want to see are the marble. And a marble is a relatively soft stone. There's a lot of marble in Mediterranean. It's easy to carve, and then it polishes beautifully. And so we still have some that weren't destroyed. Like, for example, this winged Venus de Milo, this right here, we've seen its head. Some pagan probably knocked the head off, but we still have this part of it. It's astounding. They were in the archaic period a lot like the Egyptians, where everything was stylized, and so everything kind of looked the same. They used these kind of little puzzle pieces, if you will, and everything kind of looked the same. But when they get to the classical age, they got rid of the dogma, they got rid of any rules, and they just did what we call naturalism or realism, putting people in sculpture, whatever, into realistic positions. Here we have a discus thrower at the Olympics, and that whole, motion and stuff is not something anybody else had ever done. And it's a hallmark now of modern art that we've taken it even steps further. Phidias was the great sculptor of the Acropolis, and the things he accomplished there in relief, where they would just do the first like 2 inches of the stone around maybe the doorway. And what he made it look like 3D, 3-dimensional, was just insanely good. And Praxiteles, he's another one. Even in the painting of their vases, the Greek people who would make the vases, do the molds and whatever, then they would design them. Now, these were vases that were made to just hold things. For example, they do these vases that they would put oil in and ship it, on ships to some market someplace. But they would put these beautiful reliefs on there. And every artist was different. There was nothing that was ever the same. One artist, here he is making this pot, and he's making it beautiful. He said, look how cool that is. He wrote an inscription, look how cool this is, in his own language, of course. Look how cool it is. I bet that guy couldn't have done it. In other words, I'm a better artist than he is. And it just became this source of pride. And then they did these beautiful frescoes. A fresco is a painting on a wall, and some of those have been preserved. And then mosaics are awesome. You have these little bits of pottery, if you will, and you put them side by side, so it creates the pixelation, just like we do right now. The image you're looking at is pixelated. It's just a bunch of little squares. And if you get close enough to it, you can see that it's just a little square that has a certain shade of light that creates the blue, the white, whatever. And mosaics are the same way. So you create these mosaics. So when you stand back, you get this amazing image. Remember the one I keep showing you about Alexander? That was just mosaics on a floor, just for decoration on the floor in Pompeii. So, yeah. Now, when it came to architecture, they took things to new levels. And the thing you have to know about Greek architecture, you got to know the 3 column types. It'll be on the test, trust me. There's Doric, which is kind of the most simple stuff that you see in Athens. Then you get more elaborate in certain city-states called Ionic, where look at the capstone, look at the flutes here. This is much heavier base. This is much thinner, has this at the bottom. And then you get the Corinthian, where they really go crazy with the top. So go to Corinth and you're going to see this. And this styling carries over into the Renaissance, carries into French art, all the way over as an example. But this is the kind of intricate work they're doing. This is how much money and time and effort that they were able to dedicate to just a column to hold the building up. And it changes everything in art. Also, they changed math completely. You've heard of Pythagoras. Pythagoras actually started a school of religious mathematic monks. It was religion to them. They believed that everything could be explained by numbers. And they believed in reincarnation, and they believed in asceticism, and they had this religious brotherhood, and they were a cult based on numbers. But out of this cult came geometry, the Pythagorean theorem, which you all have to know. And then they examined music and realized that music, the scales of music, is just a mathematical formula. And if you know anything about music, that's what it is. You know, you play the piano, certain keys don't sound good together, others do sound much better. This is so, so important. They developed pulleys, catapults, hydrostatics, and they figured out the value of pi. So yeah, it's even a Greek letter that is this. Now what's pi? Raise your hand if you know what pi is. Okay, so you know the number, right? And the sequence? And we can't really do math with circles without understanding this. And it's pretty fun stuff. They did water clocks, siege machines, pumps, they just, you name it. And so we owe them all of this. And so studying Greece, I wish we had another week to spend on Greece because we're just getting into the surface. But they've given us a lot, including the tools we need to beat this virus. The science, the technology that we can apply to win this battle. All right. Well, that's enough for today. Next week, we start with Rome, which is always a lot of fun. And you guys, hopefully you'll have a chance maybe to watch the debate tonight, and we'll talk more about it on Monday. All right. You take care.